Hi, everybody. It's Alex Jarett again with Technology Executives Club, and I'm really happy to introduce you to my good friend, who I've known many years, as well as our new Board of Advisor member, Neil Goodrich. Hi, Neil.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you, and we appreciate you being involved in our community and our Board of Advisors.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's great. So what we like to do with our board of advisors is do an initial interview, and then of course they do mentoring sessions on our show, Technology Executives Review. And I know we've got a couple topics we've already started talking about, but today we're just going to learn a little more about you and some of the lessons learned in the journey that you've taken to get here. So thanks for sharing. We appreciate
Sure. Okay.
that. It's good. Yeah. So, first of all, I want to congratulate you. For everybody who doesn't know Neil, you can find him on our landing page, which is where you're watching this. You can see he's the CIO at Envista Forensics. And everybody, I'm looking at his LinkedIn profile while I do some of this and looking at some of my notes. That's why I'm going back and forth. But you're the CIO of Envista Forensics, correct?
Correct.
Which is a really cool company. I was just looking up the company. So you're the company people call when they want to figure out what's on that hard drive and things like that?
We do a little of that. We do, I think, a much larger portion of the business is for the insurance industry who wants to understand what happened at a large commercial loss, right? How did your factory catch fire? Why did the roof collapse on your
Oh,
warehouse? So we've got fire investigators and civil structural engineers and mechanical engineers, and we'll go in and sort of reconstruct the cause and origin. That's the industry term for what happened first, second, third. What failed first? What caused what?
I got to tell you, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. Forensic engineering is it's interesting. A lot of good stories.
That's you and I are going to write a script. We're gonna sell it to Hollywood. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We'll take Backdraft and we'll redo it as forensic. Something. I don't know.
Yeah. The CSI slash backdraft mashup.
Yeah, you get what I'm saying. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's good. I think we're golden there. I think it's good. So, anyways, you're the CIO, but again, at Vista Forensics, but it's actually, I was just talking to you, do double duty. It's Chief Innovation Officer and Chief Information Officer. Is that correct, Neil?
It is. It is. We have sort of all the traditional technology responsibilities under our umbrella, but that wasn't the complete mandate. The
Uh-huh.
organization, when I came 2 years ago, the organization was interested in that group, yes, doing all those sort of traditional things, but
Yeah.
also
Keep the
being
lights
a
on stuff. Yeah.
but being a force for idea generation and sort of nudging the culture in that direction. So that's been a cool added bonus to what
Uh-huh.
we get to do.
Okay. That's good. That's cool. So because I know you used to come to our conferences and we would do development events and you would always talk about all the innovative work that you've been doing. I know, for example, when you're at your last company, which was uh, M. Holland Company, right? You
Yeah.
were also the Chief Innovation Officer and Chief Information Officer. I remember you telling about your this project you did with the CRM, where you really worked with the sales reps and helped sort of not re-engineer the CRM, but augment the CRM so it would be more valuable to them. And that was very innovative.
Yeah, it's funny because that seems like a long time ago, and today we would talk about that in digital product terms or product development terms, and it wasn't how we talked about it. But we built a proprietary mobile app that centralized and sort of streamlined the experience for the sales team in the field, with the intent being they should be able to answer any question on the spot. So we
Yeah.
brought data in and records from different systems so that they didn't have to go sort of look through all that. And ironically, I can't say a lot about it, but at Envista, we're pursuing a similar kind of
Oh,
concept for our investigators and experts in the field, right, who wrestle with the same thing. They're stomping around a burned out warehouse and they want to be able to see and interact with our systems,
uh-huh.
um, and work their case, right? So it all comes full circle, right? If you're thinking about how do we accelerate
Hmm.
the people around us, right? If you're in service to other people, those products sort of emerge organically.
Interesting. Well, tell me, let's talk a little more about the role, Chief. For this interview, I want to talk a little more about the role because a lot of our folks come from this the traditional CIO role, and you're one of a number of them are very innovative, but you actually have the role of What does a Chief Innovation Officer actually do? I mean, ideate. I mean, it sounds like a cool job. I want to do that job.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you. No, I'm just kidding. It's very secret. I
Yeah,
think so. The way we have approached it in both the organizations where I had that title,
yeah,
we were in the early stages of formalizing ways collect ideas from the entire organization.
yeah,
So in the prior eras, you've got an IT team that is maybe looking at the strategic goals and they're proposing ideas and they're
yeah,
also taking ideas. And invariably through that journey, somebody that you worked with on a project who's in a department somewhere who feels like they know you, they call you one day and they say, I had this idea today. I was sitting at
yeah,
home. Like, what about this idea? And it turns out it's a great idea and you go do it. And there was enough of those experiences that you say, how do we turn that from a lucky strike, right? Like, what about all the people who we don't have relationships with, who don't know who to call, who have all those ideas,
yeah,
right? How about this guy who's in the accounting team and he does cash application, but if you challenged him with a strategic topic,
uh-huh,
he would have all these great ideas. How do we find those people? How do we leverage those people? And that question, how do we transition from random, opportunistic, good ideas to what's a repeatable, scalable, sustainable process to leverage everybody's brain in the org? That's been the impetus in both these organizations. And so our challenge has been find and develop ways to get more people to play in the idea pool, give them ways to participate, right? So it's about how do we find new ideas? And then obviously the good ones you pass on and go do. So that
hmm,
to me, when I think about innovation in the stages that we're in,
yeah.
it's about adding more content to the ideation pool, more participants, more volume. Because if you get more volume, there'll be more good ideas in there.
Got you. Well, that's really interesting. Perhaps one of your mentoring segments will be exactly how you build one of these things. Like,
Okay.
here's like a framework to create this system. Because I do now remember reading about innovation years ago when through our conferences and we did a lot of events on innovation. And I remember that coming up, but then came digital transformation and now AI and
Yeah.
everything. But the fact that innovation is still, it still is critical, especially leveraging all this technology to work in these new ecosystems that are now emerging. The world is changing, the ecosystems around us are changing, and to be able to adapt and refit your organization into that is pretty important. So that's
Yeah, I think
cool.
that there's
Go ahead.
a capital I, lowercase I is how we always talk about it, right? There's always the big, everybody always thinks about the capital I, the
Uh,
moonshot, the big revolutionary transformative thing. And yeah, you should be working on a couple of those. They should be at the back of the stove, right? Simmering in the
yeah,
background.
yeah,
But don't don't forget about all the lowercase I innovation, right? Where somebody has an idea to shave 2 hours off their workload every week permanently forever, right? And like
or every
you go
day.
right, you go do 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 of those, all of a sudden that adds up.
It adds
So
up. Yeah.
I think it's one of those words that you have to be careful about how you use.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, let's talk about your award and then we'll go back into your background. You won this award recently. Let me look it up here. I think it's the Orby Award, right?
It
So
is.
tell us, congratulations. You're the
Thanks.
Chicago's CIO Orby Award corporate winner. And that's this year. That's recent as we
That's
do
this
this
year,
interview. So yeah.
April.
So congratulations. What is that? How do you win an award like that? And what is?
Well, you get a phone call out of the blue one day
Uh,
that someone says, "Congratulations, someone's put your name in the hat," which was pretty amazing to start with.
yeah.
Um, and
So they didn't tell you it was your wife. They didn't say,
they
"Hey,
did
your
not
wife
tell me that.
got to us." Yeah.
It was the
Just kidding,
team.
everybody. Yeah.
That was the team out at the Mayfield Fund, the VC firm out west in California,
Uh-huh.
who we have a good relationship with. I have some people out there, and they put us in the hat, which was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Um, and then it was a lot of information, which is what's misleading about the title. It says CIO of the year, but really, if you go look at all the information we supply, it was a
Uh-huh.
lot about what did your team accomplish this year? How did you change the business? What makes the story of your team compelling? And so
That's great.
um, it's really, to me, an external validation of the collective work of everybody that's on our now 20-25 person team,
Uh-huh.
and the change that we've elicited in the last 18 months.
So really, what I'm hearing, I've talked to somebody else who has also won one of these, one of our other board advisor members, Jeff Sheets. You might
Okay.
know him. And he said the same thing as you. It really is about the team winning these
Yeah.
awards because it's what did you all accomplish? So it's nice to hear you say something similar. Um, and that's a great honor. It's a great honor for everybody. Well, congrats on that. Well,
Thanks.
let's get a little of your background because part of what we do here is we talk a little bit about the background. I want to look at your profile, everybody. If you're watching this, you're probably on the profile. If you're just watching a short, go to technologyexecutiveclub.com, go to board advisors, look up Neil. And your specialties and areas of interest, I just want to remind you is what we put on there, and then we'll talk about your background: culture creation and team development, digital and business transformation, innovation, and product development. All really cool areas, I
Cool.
think. Yeah.
Thanks.
It's not like boring, keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Although you still got to, as one of our other members says, you still got, if somebody needs a wire run to a desk, you still got to do it.
Yeah. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this sounds cool. We'll put that under team development, culture, and team development. Run the
Yeah.
wire.
Yeah.
That's culture and team development.
That's
So
it.
we'll get into that. So what I want to do is walk through your background a little, and we'll start. I'm going to start actually at the beginning. When I talk to someone that's more like me, I say way back, but I don't have to say that with you, Neil. And your education was kind of interesting. First of all, it's typically when I see a CIO, I see like math or physics or something like
Oh
computer
yeah.
science. But with you, it's like criminology.
Yeah.
I didn't do
Yeah.
it. By the way, I wasn't there. Just to
Yeah.
be clear, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. But BA in criminology, law, and justice first, right? That
Yep.
was your initial degree. And then your first job, it goes hand in hand, is you actually did that. You were an investigator.
Did. I did. We did. I did workers' compensation fraud
Uh,
for a couple of years, right out of school. When I was trying to interview with all the federal agencies, and you go on the wait list, and you got to wait for your number to be called. That was sort of what you did in that space, and so I worked a private investigator job for a couple of years. Yeah.
wait,
Again,
did you
great.
apply to like the FBI and
Oh
those
yeah,
kind of?
yeah, yes, yep, yep. I
Can you
applied
tell
to.
us? Did you get in any of those? I mean,
No,
you can't tell us.
no. I mean, I can tell you. Like, the answer is no. I wouldn't be here, right? I would be somewhere else. I'd be at an embassy somewhere, right? Um, and at some point, I took the cue from.
Yeah, it was taking
I
too
took the
long.
cue to move along, right,
Yeah,
from the world. So yeah, I spent a couple of years doing fraud investigations, which is I really credit all the problem solving skills with that. That was
that's interesting.
how are you going to figure out if this person is telling the truth about their injury or faking it? Go, right? And there's some
That's
legal
interesting.
legal rules, but outside of that box, you can really sort of go wherever you want. And so there's no standard operating procedure. There's no manual for that, right? You just sort of got to figure it out and go. And I think about the implications of that I went from there to a business analyst role.
Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting.
So I would talk to people
So
who had
it was transferable. The skill set was transferable.
yeah, I mean, not following people through red lights on Lakeshore Drive. That part wasn't transferable. You shouldn't. But
Actually, someone else was driving, Your Honor.
right,
Yeah,
right, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That I mean, yeah, statute of limitations. But the mental piece for sure. I went from that to being someone who would talk to end users about their idea, and I would help them refine it, and then we would find a way to get it done with the tech team. And so
That's interesting.
there was a straight transfer of that stuff. And that's really how I got into the IT space. I went
Gotcha.
from being an investigator to being the guy that kicks around the company and does all the weird odd jobs that nobody can do.
Uh-huh.
And then the IT team said, "Hey, we're going to put in an ERP. You should come over here and be a subject matter expert. You've done like 5 different jobs." And
That was at Holly Hunt.
yep, that's how I
Yeah.
got into the IT space.
And what does Holly Hunt do? I didn't get a chance to look them up.
Luxury home furnishings to the interior
Oh,
design trade.
cool.
It was cool.
Yeah, it is a cool company. So yeah,
To
I
go
see you
from
did. You started off as business analyst. I could see how that and then lead business analyst. So you were good at just figuring this stuff out, and then you manager of business analyst. So you started moving up pretty quickly there, and then all of a sudden you're director of IT. How'd you make
yeah,
that jump from business analyst to director of IT? Because clearly whoever's running Holly Hunt back then saw something in you
I
as a
I think it's interesting because it comes full circle to the product story. So
uh
we started to deliver first me individually, then the team of BAs. We started to deliver really compelling products to the people inside the business. It was
huh.
the first time ever that somebody was listening to capital I ideas, and we were delivering. Here's a new screen. Here's a different kind of report. Here's a different way to do this. Here's a process improvement. And they kept giving us more and more resources. So they had to keep bumping my title so that they could put more and more resources underneath there. And then one day I woke up and I was the IT director. But it was
That's
always
in
because
stages. Yeah.
we were doing good things for the business. And they were like, well, imagine they could do if they had this other set of people. What if they had this other set of people? And so eventually we collected the entire IT department
That's really
under
interesting.
the umbrella.
You were just doing it. It's back to our script. It's like when you watch these shows where they say you're going to do this project, like the FBI guy or the person that's going to go overseas and do something for the CIA, and they're like, well, I don't have that level. You do now,
Right, right,
right? I've
right.
seen that in like a half a dozen movies.
Well, I'm going to
You,
need a team, right?
yeah, yeah,
Then I got to
yeah.
pick out all the people.
I'm not cleared for that. You are now. Exactly. So that's exactly what happened to you. That's wonderful. And so then you go from Holly Hunt to IT manager, and then again a jump back to director of IT, acting CIO. Oh, so that's boy, you went directly from Holly Hunt to Holland,
Yep.
and then you were there for 8 years. But I tell you, it's a great rise. You started off as IT manager, so they're clearly a bigger company,
They were
right?
a bigger company. I
Yeah.
think the theme in both Holly Hunt and M Holland and even
Uh-huh.
in Vista, I end up in roles that the company has never had before. And so what happens is we start to do really good things,
Hmm.
and the role they keep pulling us up. So the same story at Holly Hunt happened at M Holland, where we kept being pulled further and further up the brainstorming and strategy timeline. And eventually, right, they created the first ever technology based C suite role at M Holland.
Uh-huh.
That didn't exist before me and that generation of the IT team. And then the same thing in Vista Forensics has never had a C-level person at the technology piece. They've had IT directors, they've had IT managers, but there was an intentionality to bring that at the strategic brainstorming ideation level. And so I'm once again doing something that the organization has never had before.
That's really interesting. You know, just digital transformation has been such a big deal, and now AI. So and I hear about it, chief AI officers, but it's interesting that the innovation part is what really helped you rise.
Yeah, and
And it,
I'm not even sure that for most of the time it wasn't even called innovation, right?
you're just doing it.
We were just doing cool stuff and building great products and
Uh,
bringing value to the business. And at some point, someone was like, "Hey, I think that might be innovation."
so if you're watching this, for Neil, one of your strengths is this analytics capability and solving problems for other people and listening. Clearly, you're a good listener. So when you were, because you're talking about the ideas coming from other people, and I remember when you were telling your stories, you were doing ride-alongs, and with the sales reps, and you were so they would even communicate stuff to you just by you watching and listening,
Oh yeah,
observing their behavior. That's got to be a lot from your program, early program where you were an investigator. You were watching how people act and you're listening to them, and they may not be because they're not developers. I remember you saying this once. A lot of people aren't developers. They can't visualize, oh, we can automate this, but you can. So if you
yep,
hear them or watch them, you can say, oh, what about this? That's
yeah.
really interesting.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you're a product person out there right now,
Yeah.
you're rolling your eyes and you're like, "Yeah, of course, the voice of customer." Like you have to get as
Yeah.
close to the voice of customer as you can. And I
Yeah.
think that that's still new for a lot of places who think
It
about
is.
technology, internal technology products, and getting close to the voice of the customer. For us, right, it's investigators in the field, and to that exact story, we have a gentleman that is the product person for some of
Uh-huh.
the tools we're making for them,
Yeah.
and we've got him doing ride-alongs right now. He's
Oh,
out in the
right now,
field.
you're still doing that.
Yeah, he's out in the field watching those guys work matters and see how they use their phone and when do they use the iPad versus the phone and what are you doing there and why aren't you using talk to text, right? So and every time he comes back, he has all these wonderful nuanced insights and he delivers just little tweaks to the products that make a ton of sense to the users.
That's really interesting. And what I like when I talk to you, you always get excited about these things.
Ah,
You
I
get
can't.
excited about these things. It's
Yeah.
like you still have that energy that I think that is really important. I think it's not something you necessarily would put on paper, but having the enthusiasm for ideas, and especially other people's ideas, I'm sure that goes a long way. I just did a segment with one of the other board advisory members on emotional intelligence. I think you really have high emotional intelligence because you're listening to other people and you're empathizing with them and you're getting excited about their ideas and helping them. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I legitimately, uh, when that product person came back for the first time from
Uh-huh.
the first set of ride-alongs, and he had such an amazing experience. He was psyched, right? He had
He was
discovered all these.
psyched.
He was
Yeah,
psyched, and that made me excited that he had just unlocked this whole new arena for himself. And I wish I could be less nerdy about that, but that's the part that gets me out of bed in the morning, right?
yeah.
To see people get excited and have breakthroughs. And it doesn't really matter if you're somebody on my team and you're learning a new skill or you're somebody in the business and we just delivered this idea that you had about a new screen or a field and you're psyched. Like that's the part that you just can't beat that energy.
That's really great. Listen, you're obviously creative and you're innovative. I'm even looking at your background. I mean, most CIOs that I interview don't have this kind of background. You're the
Oh,
gaming, the pictures and stuff like that. I used to be in the video game business. It's like I'm interviewing someone from that part of my career. It's awesome though, but it is very creative. You're very creative, but you've learned to sort of so this is like a really good message for those of you creative technology. There's room for you
yeah.
because a
Yeah.
lot of these skills transfer, right? A lot of these
Yeah.
skills transfer over in technology then. And the other thing is in today's world, tell me about this, AI is here, programming without programming, where they talk about codeless programming
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
It seems to me like these skills that you're talking about, the ability to discern, the ability to analyze, the ability to visualize the customer experience, these are going to be more and more important because the actual coding you're not going to have to do. Is that correct?
Okay, you're not going to get me on record saying that there's going to be no coding anymore. You're
Well, I'm
trying to
not
get
trying
me.
to.
You're trying to get me canceled on the internet.
But I have a company that, I've been talking to and they talk about this. So,
Yeah.
They talk about codeless programming.
When I think about, if you think about anything that your IT team or technology team is producing, if you think about that as a product and you back it up, the quality of that thing is totally dependent on the quality of the idea that you started with.
Uh-huh.
So if you are close to your customer, if you're inside their secret everyday life, if you know that they use a pencil, so if you built this feature to use a pencil, it would blow their mind. Those are things that you're not going to figure out on a whiteboard in a room, right? You have to be close to your customer. You have to do the work, whatever that means. If it's an external product group, then you've got to do customer surveys and get out there and try to talk to customers. But I think about the piece that's just not substitutable, and the quality of that front end voice of customer work is so critical to building differentiated, compelling products downstream. Yes. Could you code it terrible and ruin the whole thing? You could, but that's likely not the scenario, right? If you had a really good idea, chances are it's probably not that complex technically. Somebody's done it before. And so you think about the real value of the IT team is their ability to understand the business, observe, have a really great discussion and riff on ideas and brainstorming. So like, to me, yes, do you need developers? Yes. Do you need network folks? Yes. You need all of those technical folks. But the part that differentiates and finds really big value is the idea generation piece, whether you call that innovation, whether you call that products. And once you find the idea, delivery of that can span all of those technical folks, right? The network team and the developers and everybody in between. But if you don't have the idea, there's nothing to work on.
That's great. So clearly that covers the ideas, or partly covers the ideas that come from within.
Yeah.
And you develop this creative, this ecosystem where the ideas, even from people you don't know, can bubble up and you have a way of seeing them and all that. So obviously you do a great job of that, and you teach your creative, and we'll talk about more about creativity in a minute. What about, I talked to a lot of people that come at it from a different standpoint, especially when there's massive shifts. I interviewed somebody last week who runs an AI practice, and there is a shift occurring.
Yeah.
There's a shift. There's going to be lots of shifts occurring. And, AI is built into products through APIs now. You don't have to invest in LLM. You can just borrow somebody else's in some way. And, what about looking at more holistically, like you see enterprise architects and, looking at here's the industry and here's what our company does. Do you delve into that kind of thing at all? Or is that, when you talk about the voice of the customer and all that, because it seems to me like a lot of the shift is going to occur from the voice of the customer and delivering that service in a more automated way.
Yeah, I think, again, unpopular opinion. I think if you reduce AI just back to another way to achieve things, and it has for sure opened new options where before the answer was no, we can't do that. Now you can, right? So there's some new options in the toolbox. But I think about, if your goal is to deliver, so we deliver investigation reports largely to claims adjusters. That's our business.
Yeah.
Would those folks like those reports faster? Yes. Right. So how do I do that? Well, I can do it in lots of ways, right? I can automate parts of our process so that the investigator doesn't have to do it manually. I could leverage a mobile device to know that the person is at the investigation site so they don't have to check mark that box. We could auto notify the adjuster that they visited the site. So when you start thinking about what's the customer want and you work backwards, understanding the capabilities that AI unlocks just now becomes part of the portfolio of ways to achieve the customer experience, right? But it still comes back to, what does the customer want? What does the customer value, right? Somewhere that adjuster has a manager. What is the manager asking for that person? How do you make that adjuster look like a rock star, right? So that they are like, oh, I'm going to call Envista Forensics because when I use them, I look great.
My job is easier.
Right, which is a different version of managing up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. So let's jump into creativity, because you talk about, I've seen some of your posts and you like to post about creativity and things like that. You know, how do you look at creativity and how that sort of plays a role for you? Because I see a lot of people, again, in your role, more of the IT role than the innovative role, but a lot of really good IT executives are really good at creating environments of innovation. But for you, creativity seems to play a key. I don't know if it's a spark or it's a influence for you. Tell me about that. Tell us about that for you.
I think that's probably just a different name for innovation, right? So if you want an environment where people are going to go on a ride along and they're trying to watch for a thing, just trying to see an opportunity. To me, that's fundamentally they're creative, right? They're trying to leverage some creativity. You back up and you say, how do I make an environment where everybody is excited to do that? You can't mandate it. You can't show up and be like, you're going to be creative. Go look for ideas. You have to create a place that inspires them to do that. You can't do that. We're going to have forced creativity.
Well, you can't. We need that song by tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Somehow the song shows up.
Yeah. So I think, to me, creativity is a part of how you build the team atmosphere. It's got to be a foundational element, right? You've got to choose people who are going to get there, who are going to contribute to that culture, who are going to be excited about somebody else. Like, there's all these things that you do. And if you infuse that as a fundamental element of how the team works, all of a sudden everybody is out there trying to come up with the next idea. And so to me, it's intertwined very closely with the innovation part.
That's interesting. Well, if I look at your background, I got a couple other questions for you, but if I look at your background, I just summarize some of the things that I heard, which is really fascinating. We go all the way back to the beginning, your analytical ability, your ability to discern between, is it this or is it that? What are the facts telling me? What's my gut telling me? What's interesting? So now all of a sudden you take those skills, you transfer them over. Now you're an analyst, then you're manager of business analysis. So you took that skill. So somebody watching this, that's a good skill to learn. But any of you, whatever your core strength is, you take your strengths and keep moving with it. And for you, that's what it was, the ability to discern and analyze. And then all of a sudden you just started. The other thing that I heard is that you were interested in what other people were doing around you, and you were helping them. And you mentioned service to others multiple times, which you didn't put in your profile, but it clearly is part of your DNA, that you are there to serve and help other people. And then by doing that, those two things, I think that was kind of the spark or the fuel that helped you rise, Neil.
I had someone say that to me recently, and I don't think I ever thought about it because that just always made sense, right?
You weren't thinking about you. You were just fixing things for other people.
Yeah, like who doesn't, if you've ever given somebody the perfect gift, and you're so excited before you give it to them, and then they open it and they freak out and you're like so thrilled, like who doesn't want to do that all the time? right? Like if I have the power to make the screen or the report or the field that generates that excitement for somebody, who wouldn't do that like 365 days a year? And so it just made sense. And you're like, you know what I'm going to do? We have a team of 4 people. I want 4 people doing that. Like, not just me. Like, that one person's cool, but like if we had 4 people doing it, we're going to quadruple the number of things that we can do like that, right? And everybody's going to bring their own special sauce to that core concept. And so that's still how I manage. It's still how we build teams. It's still the culture of what we do.
When you say that, I just picture Christmas or whatever you celebrate. You just go in downstairs and you're like, you got the present for your mom or your sister or something, and you're like, you haven't lost it, Neil. You still have that feeling, and you were able to keep that. It's a blessing for you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm really talking to you, not just interviewing you here. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Well,
I think that's a big part of your success is the ability to help these other people, just like you said, to give them these gifts like, hey, here, I helped you save that 2 hours a week. And they're like, oh God, Neil, thanks. Now I can go home on time.
Yeah.
Which means everything to them.
You hit something else in there, like the public service announcement, the after school message, which is like through, I would say, my early 30s.
Yeah.
I had no idea what my plan was, right? I was just moving through a series of these roles that I just enjoyed doing. People would say, what are you going to do in 5 years? And I said, I don't know, but I know I'm not going to do the same thing every day, right? It's got to have these elements. And one day I stumbled into a track of work where I've stayed. And so anybody who's out there who has an unusual background, who's done a couple different things, like there's a path forward. You have to just be able to articulate. You have skills from whatever that experience was that are valuable in some other dimension. Some other application will use those, and you just have to be able to articulate that in a way that makes you special.
That's very inspiring. Don't go any further. I may start crying. I mean, but all kidding aside, that is very inspiring. It's very nice. I mean, I feel like that happened to me. We're not talking about me, but I was doing events and now I'm doing the show and the podcast and I'm helping folks like you get the word out. And you just delivered a really wonderful message. It is really about helping other people. And for somebody that's out there and they don't know where their skill set fits, just keep carrying on till you find that you can actually help some other people and you'll find your role. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a nice message.
The team at Holly Hunt, the team at M. Holland, and the team now at Envista, each of those have won different awards. We've won some internal awards. We won some external recognition. Each of those teams were populated by a vast majority of team members who did not have IT degrees. Sports management, early childhood education, no degree. A guy we rescued out of the accounting department because we saw his potential. A guy we recruited whose previous experience included working at the ink retail, the ink cartridge refill places. He went on to be a data architect on one of those teams. He loved it. And I think you just have to look for those intangibles, the curiosity, the creativity, the interest, the service to others piece. You can't fake it. And the rest of the stuff sort of works out, right? He had inherent problem solving that no one at the ink cartridge center was using. And we turned him loose and he made this amazing runway for himself. And so that's who I populate my teams with vagabonds and Renaissance people, right?
I feel we're going to go on a journey or something. This is the beginning. So, I mean, this has been a great talk. And we just go back through this because, sometimes I interview people that had like 20 different jobs. I mean, you've really had multiple jobs within your jobs. One thing I did pass on by mistake, and I'll say it now, you did go back and get an MBA. So I see, and I see a lot of very successful people that have done that. They get the grounding on how a business runs.
Yep.
from getting an MBA, and it was in operations management. So that ties in real well. And you did that when, let me see, 2009. So you did that when you were at Holly Hunt?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a good clue for everybody. A lot of successful people go back to school. Did you do that at night while you were working? I've heard that story many times. So
Yep.
wherever you are, it's not too late to go back and get that education. And I've seen a lot of people move from one level to another once they get that. It may not happen immediately, but a lot of people at a certain level, and I see this a lot, the senior executives will say, does he or she have an MBA or an advanced degree? And they do look at that. Not all the time, not all the time, but they do look at that. So I see that you did that. But then
You
I see
know,
again, go ahead.
I was just going to say the MBA is interesting because when I think about what has made us effective listeners, right? When you think about building relationships and building products and ideas,
Mm.
I spent some time in accounting, spent a couple years in accounting. I can talk accounting, right? I have been in those shoes. I ran a warehouse for a couple of years. I can go out to a manufacturing shop floor or a warehouse floor and talk in that language. And that immediately unlocks so many possibilities, right? There's credibility. People want to talk to you. They're going to tell you about ideas they wouldn't otherwise tell you. And the MBA is a similar tool. It outfits you with the vocabulary to have a discussion about financials, to have a discussion about leverage or M&A vocabulary, right? So like this idea that it trains you to be able to converse and build relationships with other parts of the business that are different
Oh,
from where you've come from. That's the secret to me of the MBA, is that it has allowed me to form relationships because I can talk to other people more
you
effectively.
know what they're doing. You get a
Right.
sense of what they're doing. You know why they're doing it. See, I got that. I had an advanced accounting degree and I was trained to be a consultant, so I got a lot of that there. So that's really interesting. So we've gone through a great conversation. Let me see if there's anything else in your background that I want to highlight. I think we've covered a lot of the big things. So if I go back to areas, part of being on the board is like people can reach out to you and say, hey, what about this area? And the
Yeah.
the videos that we'll do together, some of the mentoring segments, your specialties and area of interest. Again, I said it in the beginning, I'll repeat it: culture creation and team development. And you put that first: digital and business transformation, innovation, and product development. Is there any of those three areas that you want to add? Like, hey, I really wanted to share this with, because you've kind of touched on a lot of these
I
throughout our
do.
talk.
I do feel. I feel like we hit them all. I think
Mm.
they all make sense listening to you reread them. It feels like we've hit them in different dimensions through the
Mhm.
discussion. And that's not an accident that I put that one first.
The team develop culture
Hundred
creation.
percent.
So when you
100%.
go into an environment, how do you create a culture? I mean, what do you got? Ping pong tables there? I mean, what does that even mean
Right.
to you? You know,
Uh, behaviors. Right. It
uh,
comes down to behaviors and social norms, and you have to set the table for how are we going to behave, what's desired, why are we behaving like that,
interesting.
what's the end game of that, right? And then you have to, sounds brutal, relentlessly maintain your garden, right? If someone's not adhering to that, you got to have a conversation. You got to try to straighten them out. You got to try to put them back in the boat. Like that's the early phases of that culture creation is hard work, like driving, just constant tiny adjustments, finding ways to reinforce the desired behaviors, right? It's it's very not creative. It's very structured, right?
So it's almost like
And
you're a new football or baseball coach coming in.
100%,
Yeah,
100%. And the magic moment is when, like, for me, it's the moment where my teams fire me from the interview process because they can now do their own culture interview without me.
interesting.
Because they're now enforcing their own, they have something to protect. I'm not building it anymore. That team has a culture that they're protecting, and they're going to make sure that people fit into those norms, right?
That's really interesting. So again, I refer to this interview I did a few months ago on emotional intelligence. You have a high degree. You have a high emotional intelligence. I think I would flunk that test, but it's my joke. I think I would have. I think I'm okay now. Okay, he passes now.
Yeah.
Maybe not the A student, but Alex passes. We'll let them through. But I think you have a really high emotional intelligence because you talk about these things and you actually do them. And I think that's awesome. So, Neil, this has been an awesome. I feel like you and I could talk for like 2 hours, but
It's been fun. Thank you.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
been a lot of fun. A lot of great insights. I see how working with you on your team would be a lot of fun, but also very productive. So, congratulations again to you and your team, right,
Thanks. Yeah.
for the recent award. I'm sure this is one of many that you're going to continue to get. And what a great career. We're really grateful to have you involved in our community.
Thanks. Thanks, Alex.